Now, for the most part, Solomon is a really good king.
That's good.
Who's Solomon again? This is the son of David and Bathsheba, which makes Solomon part of the Davidic dynasty. This word dynasty refers to a succession in a family line, typically father and son. Jesus, of course, way down the line is part of the Davidic dynasty as well. Jesus is from the genealogy of King David. We all know what made Solomon a really good king was his wisdom.
Wisdom, to be wise, the ability to make good decisions.
But how did he get to be so wise? Well, how do you think? God, the Lord, appears to Solomon in a dream.
What'd you dream?
Ask something of me and I will give it to you. Whoa, free ticket! Solomon acknowledges that he's very young and very insecure and says to God, give to your servant an understanding heart to judge your people and to distinguish right from wrong. The Lord is very pleased with this response because, of course, the typical reaction from a normal human being would be old age, lots of material wealth, maybe an infinite number of wishes. Solomon just replies with, I want wisdom. I want understanding to be able to lead your people. Did Solomon fall from heaven?
Did it hurt when you fell from heaven?
I mean, literally, you can see right off the bat in Solomon's character, he is upholding that hierarchy that God established with Samuel of God, law, kings, people. Solomon is recognizing that he is subordinate to God and wants to please God. And the only way to lead God's people is this ability, this gift of wisdom. After all, these people are wild cards, aren't they? And you gotta be wise in order to know how to manage them. In addition, I'll give you what you did not ask for, fortune and glory.
Fortune and glory.
Did Solomon answer correctly or what? My son, I will give you whatever you want. And the son says to the father, I want what best will serve you and your people.
That's the most outstanding answer I've ever heard.
Wow. And no wonder God then rewards him with a number of riches, an infinite number of riches, because that's a good answer that is worthy of a reward, right? So almost immediately you see an example involving this new gift of wisdom brought upon Solomon, where you have the story of the two harlots, right? The two concubines. Really sad story. These women give birth at the same time, and then one night they are sleeping in a bed with their baby, and the one woman rolls over and smothers that baby. And so she wakes up and she realizes, oh no, my baby is dead, but her baby's still alive, so I'm going to go over there and take her baby and pull a switcheroo. You know where I've seen this before? March of the Penguins. I kid you not. On March of the Penguins, you have this mama penguin who loses her baby penguin, and so she goes over to the other mama penguin who still has a baby penguin, tries to snatch that baby penguin, and the mother of the living penguin's like, oh no, you didn't, and all the other birds come together and they're like, oh no, you don't, you reap what you sow, your baby's dead, you're not going to take her baby. Sounds like a Springer episode. Is he even on the air anymore? So they bring this matter forth to King Solomon, who has to decide who is the true mother, who deserves the living child. He says, well, chop that baby in half, and they each get their own part. And so the false mother says, oh yeah, that sounds like a good deal, chop that kid in half. And the rightful mother's like, oh no, here, take my baby, take my baby. I'd rather have my baby alive with a fake mom than a dead baby cut in half, so you can have the baby. And King Solomon's like, hold the phones, that woman right there, she must be the true mother, because only a true mother would say, I'd rather have the son alive with another parent than not alive at all. So what we learn from this story is that number one, sudden infant death syndrome is a serious problem. And two, don't cut your babies in half. Now, because Solomon is known for his wisdom, There are a lot of books in our Old Testament that have been falsely attributed to him. Obviously, people don't know who wrote many of these books of the Bible. And so when they came across a book that sounded wise, they just said, wow, that must have been Solomon, because who in history was wise? Well, that one guy, that King Solomon. You have the book Song of Songs, which also goes by the name of Song of Solomon. Of course, you have the book that is known as the Wisdom of Solomon, also known as the Book of Wisdom. Ecclesiastes, and Proverbs. Now, is it possible that Solomon may have written part of Proverbs? I mean, yeah, Proverbs is like a collection of sayings for over a course of 1,000 years of history. So maybe one or two of them may have actually been from King Solomon. But Solomon did not collect and write these Proverbs. So what did Solomon do besides save a baby from dying? Well, he embarked on a heavy building campaign. He is the one who builds the temple. I know you're thinking, wait a minute, didn't David want to build a temple? Well, one of the consequences for the murder of Uriah was that David was never free from peace. He was never free from turmoil in the land. And because David had blood upon his hands, the blood of Uriah, the blood of his enemies, he was not permitted to build that temple that he envisioned.
You've got blood on your hands.
Solomon's the one who really develops this building campaign. It was a time of unprecedented wealth and unparalleled prosperity for the kingdom of Israel. He heavily taxes the people to build this temple, to build fortification walls around Jerusalem. It took Solomon 13 years to build his palace. He established administrative districts. He modernized the military with the use of horses and chariots. He also established trade embargoes, trade campaigns, trade relations. Solomon was the fulfillment of what the Israelites demanded of Samuel when they said they wanted a monarchy. So was Solomon a perfect human being and a perfect model of what a king ought to be? For the most part, until he gets introduced to the ladies. His wealth became so great and his fame so widespread that he loses his focus.
You're blind.
He becomes more and more attached to his physical material, more dependent on his wealth, and more attentive to his wives than God. Solomon liked women, and he particularly had an interest in foreign women. Now there's a problem with that, right? God has wanted the Israelites to maintain their own identity, which is one of the reasons why they have to offer up a ban when they conquer a city, so that there's no cultural contamination. It says in 1 Kings that Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines.
Oh, yeah.
That's 1,000 women! Now, of course, these are biblical numbers. You can't put a lot of stock into them. He even married an Egyptian pharaoh's daughter. And these women wanted temples. They wanted shrines dedicated to their pagan gods. And ultimately, it was these women that have steered Solomon towards worshiping false gods. Oh, Solomon, you are doing everything perfectly.
You just cocked it up.
And he allows for the building of temples to false gods in the promised land. And it says when Solomon turned old, he turned away from the Lord. This is why God was always about upholding the ban. The cultural contamination now is messing with these people. Fortunately for Solomon, he doesn't have to face the repercussions of his apostasy, because the punishment for his turning away from the Lord is actually his descendants and his servant are going to battle it out to inherit his throne. And this is going to lead to a civil war and a kingdom divided. So what can we learn from the story of Solomon? Well, God is true to his word. If you honor him, you will have prosperity. But you have to be careful not to dishonor those blessings. Always show gratitude for the blessings bestowed upon you, for your many gifts. And don't let those gifts go to your head. Jesus says in the Garden of Gethsemane, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And if our spirit is willing, God is going to grace us with all kinds of rewards. But our flesh is weak. Don't start thinking those rewards are solely your doing and the source of your happiness. God is the source of your happiness. Never lose sight of that and never start turning towards them as false gods. We can be wealthy, but blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those that live in a spirit of poverty, even in light of such wealth.